Trust the Plan podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Preston.
And Jim is out today. Where's Jim at?
Soaking up some sun, I think.
I think he's in Florida.
Yeah.
Spring break. Yeah. We're covering for you, Jim. Don't worry. So, Preston, today we're talking about educating our clients, right?
Yeah. And that's what we say to all of our clients. Our goal is to provide education and guidance.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We provide education and guidance. I'm losing my train of thought here. Provide education and guidance so we can inspire you to make great financial decisions so you can retire with peak confidence. Nailed it.
Well said.
All right, so what does this mean, provide education and guidance? What do you mean by this?
You know, it's really just we want our clients to be involved in the decision-making process and to fully understand what's going on. We don't want to be those advisors that we hear stories about where the client comes in and says, I have this money, and the advisor says, I know what to do with it. And there's no explanation, no discussion. The client has no idea what's going on. And then eventually that client comes to us and says, I have no idea what my advisor is doing.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thought experiment. Someone brings you money and you say, I'm going to invest this money. Well, for when are we going to need it? How much risk do we want to take? You know, what are all the other things happening in my life, et cetera, et cetera. And so there is a lot more to it. It reminds me of a time when, and I think that you had this experience as well, you're sitting down with someone and in old school fashion filling out paperwork for someone when they're signing on board. And we have these rules in the industry, the know your customer rules. Mm-hmm. At the very minimum, you have to understand someone's situation, what's their income look like, what is their liquid net worth, total net worth, liabilities, what's their cost of living. We have to have these things. And so you ask someone, well, what's your net worth? And they say, none of your business. This happened, right?
Yeah, recently.
Yeah. So how do you respond to that?
You just respond and say it's really going to be tough for us to make investment decisions for you without knowing, this portfolio, what percentage is it of your total net worth, and when are you going to need this money? All those questions. It's going to be tough to make the right decision.
I have an even simpler answer. Someone says, well, why do you need to know that? It's none of your business. And I say, well, if you don't tell me, you can't open an account. Period.
Yeah.
It's that simple because these are the regulations that we have to follow. So maybe like 30 years ago, it was like name and social security number. But now we have Patriot Act. We have all kinds of regulations from the SEC and FINRA that we have to follow. And so we have to know your situation, right? That's getting a little off topic, but coming back to education.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's really disheartening to hear when people come in and say, I have no idea what's been going on with my money for the last 5 years, 10 years, however long they've been working with someone. Because, it's tough for me to imagine as someone who loves investments and loves financial planning, it's tough for me to imagine just not knowing what's going on. And for most people, I feel like that would drive fear. It would increase the level of anxiety they have with finances because they don't know what's going on.
And so a person's coming in saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I've been doing. I don't understand. They're basically blaming their old advisor. Right? So the old advisor, if we ask them, what might they say?
The old advisor might say the client was not interested in discussing things or learning more about what's going on.
Right. That's probably what they would say. Whether they're both to blame or whether it's all the advisor's fault, that's we don't pass judgment on that.
Right.
But we simply are trying to fix that problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And maybe something happened with the relationship between the advisor and the client, or maybe there's just a communication gap where they didn't understand each other, they didn't talk the same language. If you speak Hindi and I speak English, you're going to tell the stuff to me and I'm not going to hear it.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that happens when we're both speaking English about financial topics. Because a lot of people tune out or they don't have the interest, or they don't understand, and they're afraid to speak up.
Right.
And maybe the advisor's telling them things and he or she thinks that the client is understanding, but they're not.
Right. Yeah. And it really all comes really kind of comes down to like a teacher-student relationship, right? The advisor needs to be teaching and providing the guidance and speaking in layman's terms, and the client needs to be engaged and active and interested in what are you saying? I didn't quite get that point.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And so it is a team, right? It's you have that teacher relationship, but we're on the same team, right? And so some people are much more savvy than others, right? Some people, they need to be told exactly what to do. Some people need to know why we're doing this particular strategy or this exercise. And I get all that. And so our job is to be able to communicate with the client in each of those different situations and inspire action. Because if we know that the plan that the plan that we're on, if you say, what is your situation going to look like if you keep doing what you're doing for the next 10 years and we don't like the result or we don't like that feeling after answering that question, we have to take action. So we have to inspire you to take action to make sure that we're going to reach the goal, that you're going to reach your goals.
Right. Yeah, if you don't know where you stand in comparison to your goals, you're never going to feel pain or feel, the inspiration, like you just said, to actually go out and grab those goals.
Yeah. There's other people that have maybe goals that us, an advisor, we think, oh, that's different, or maybe that's kind of silly, right? But that's not for us to pass judgment on, right? I mean,
No.
If it's your goal, our job is to see how the best way to get there is, and what do we have to do to get on track to reach it.
Exactly right. Yeah, and there is one point of are you guys actually joking around discussing the goals? Like if I were to say I want to retire today at 25, like obviously that's a joke, right? But if a client comes to us and says I want to leave money to my kids, that's very important to me. It's not on us to tell you should or shouldn't do that. It's on us to say, how can we get to those goals?
Exactly. And we can talk those out. It's like, well, what is it that's important about this particular goal? And yes, definitely to understand and read the room when, when someone says, well, I want to retire yesterday. Well, now we're having fun with it, right? But if someone says they want to retire at 55, I can't say, well, that's a dumb goal, right?
Right.
We have to listen and we have to acknowledge and we have to say, all right, let's roll up our sleeves and let's figure out if we can do it. And if we're not on track, which changes do we need to make right now?
Yeah, it just reminded me, I think there's a trend on social media right now where they say we listen and we don't judge.
Oh, well, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
But Jim did, from vacation, send me an interesting Twitter post that kind of is related to this, right? Where a financial advisor, CFP, posts something about how another advisor was recommending to someone to max out their IRA every year, but they were not eligible, okay? Because they're earning too much. So if you make too much, you cannot deduct your IRA. And so it makes me think of this topic because, right, someone comes and says, I want to invest money. Like, well, let's do an IRA without even checking to see if you're eligible.
Right.
You have to know your customer. You have to understand the income. You have to know the situation and not just sell someone commission products.
Right. Yeah. The advisor in this situation heard I have money to invest, and the action was I have a commission to sell. Right.
Commission to make, yeah. Yep. And so, commission's old school, not the way that we like to do business. We want to be on a fee-based track with our clients. As fiduciary, everything that we recommend is always in your client's best interest. In this case, the advisors think, maybe thinking that this is the right thing to do, but not doing all the homework, but charging a commission, taking the $7,000, making $350 commission on it or something, and investing it. Maybe they thought they were doing the right thing, but there's a communication gap. There's the KYC, know your customer. Something broke down here in this example, and it doesn't happen very often because I don't see a lot of people doing traditional IRAs at all, because most people would be contributing to their 401 or a Roth IRA.
Yeah, it's very rare for someone to be able to do a traditional nowadays.
Yeah, because of the deductibility limits. Mm-hmm. The time we do a traditional is when we're doing a backdoor Roth, and the money's only in there for a day. But anyway, hey, I'm gonna make this commission, whether it's right or wrong for you. And I don't like that.
No, not at all.
All right, so what else do we have on this topic of providing education and guidance and goal-based planning?
I mean, I think we covered most of it, but that's also kind of what inspired this podcast, right? The whole reason we do the podcast is our clients can look back and say, we stopped keeping track of the episodes. We used to say, this is episode number whatever, but there's tons of episodes on many different topics, and any client at any time can look that up and say, what did Nick, Jim, and Preston have to say about that?
That's right. This is probably like episode 300, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
We'll go with it.
Okay.
All right, guys, that'll do it for today. Make sure that you are subscribed, like, and sharing. And if you'd like to learn more about us, visit us at peakwm.com.